Good morning, Dan and Amy. This is interesting. New country heard from one Central Illinois Congresswoman named Sherry Bustos weighing in on the Republican proposal to replace Obamacare. This
is a state rep?
Congresswoman.
Oh, excuse me.
She's very quietly, after saying she was not interested in running for governor in 2018, she very quietly filed paperwork to establish a state political action committee. So she may still be exploring a gubernatorial because she did it quietly. I don't want to let the cat out of the bag.
I don't want to let anybody know that I'm running for governor.
So here's Sherry Bustos repeating the talking points that she was given from Pelosi and the P-Hat posse. And she's on with Steve Kornacki on MSNBC, who's basically the only guy on CNBC who comes even close to playing it straight. And I think he's also the only on-air personality at MSNBC, I should say, MSNBC. The only on-air personality at MSNBC who pays his taxes as well. Here's Sherry Bustos repeating the talking points you'll hear for the next 18 months from the Democrats.
So the 14 million fewer who are insured, what's going to happen is those who will opt out when there's no longer a mandate will be the healthiest of the healthy. And so that will leave this so-called sick pool, the people who are the sickest, the seniors, the disabled, kids, the people who are going to need insurance the most. Those will be the people left out in the cold. There are also estimates, and I don't know if the CBO will get into something like this, but that seniors will pay as much as 5 times more than others through this Paul Ryan, Donald Trump plan. So what I would ask of people is to really drill down, take the time to look at what this new plan will mean and what it will mean specifically to you, to your family, because the news is not good news unless you're healthy.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. I wish Congressman Bustos would take her own advice and look at the plan as well as look at the CBO scoring, if you believe the CBO scoring, which is another topic of discussion. But by 2026, premiums decrease by a projected 10%. Those are CBO numbers. So it's not exactly the dystopian scenario that Congresswoman Bustos presents. For more on this topic and what the CBO score means for moving it through both chambers, we're pleased to be joined by our friend David Drucker, senior Capitol Hill correspondent for the Washington Examiner, WashingtonExaminer.com. David, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
So on the good news side that Paul Ryan was touting, $1.2 trillion in spending reduction, $882 billion in tax relief. That nets you out $337 billion in deficit reduction, according to CBO. And so this is good news because you can move it through reconciliation. It speaks of fiscal conservatism. And this is something the GOP can sell. Is it something that Paul Ryan can sell to the GOP holdouts on his proposal?
Well, maybe. I mean, look, I think it's really up to President Trump to sell the GOP holdouts. I mean, it's even though Ryan was instrumental in writing the bill, he did it really with an eye towards satisfying Trump's desire that a lot of these benefits remain in place, pre-existing conditions and everything else. I mean, a lot of Republicans want that as well. And I think one of the things they're running into is trying to design a bill that does all of the good things that the Affordable Care Act did that people seem to like, but none of the things they didn't like. And that's hard to do. So the CBO score for some good news on deficit reduction. As you notice, the numbers about the number of people that will lose coverage or not be covered over the years. Well, of course, some of that's related to the fact that they're no longer going to be forced to be covered by the government, forcing them to do so by law. Those numbers are going to be, at least in the short term, problematic, and Republicans are going to have to figure out a way to not be scared off by them.
Well, and the numbers, though, the CBO concedes the 14 million number. Most of those individuals will be voluntarily opting to not purchase health insurance, so they're choosing not to do it. It's not that they want to and they can't get access. And then number two, you still have the tax credit entitlement, which is a sticking point for some conservatives and members of the Freedom Caucus. But you still, if your coverage is withdrawn because of rolling back Medicaid expansion, you still have the tax credit vehicle through which to purchase a health insurance in the private market.
Right. And so, look, I can't argue with any of that. What the debate is about, and it's really an intra-party debate here among Republicans, is whether or not the repeal and replace vehicle, the American Health Care Act, is enough repeal and satisfactory replacement. The guys on the right are upset because they don't really think it repeals the architecture of Obamacare. They think it leaves too many things in place because you're still telling insurance companies that you have to provide a certain level of coverage and benefits. And, of course, among moderate Republicans or even Republicans who are conservative but come from states that adopted the Medicaid expansion, and now they have a bunch of people that are using that expansion, even though this is going to implement or would implement a Medicaid reform that a lot of Republicans have wanted over the years and let the states be in charge. They're concerned about, what's going to happen to people that are on this Medicaid expansion portion of the coverage, so you've got to satisfy them. And, then you got to satisfy the president because he's the one that's been running around saying everybody's going to be covered and they're going to have better coverage for less money. But everybody's going to be covered part of that equation is difficult to do if you're going to do a real, a more free market oriented type of piece of legislation.
Yeah, on the campaign trail, he kept saying, you're going to love this health care plan, but a group that's not loving it so much, and I want you to help me out here, the age tax, people between 50 and 64 who make less than $30,000 or less a year. Can you explain why the AARP is upset about what they call an age tax?
Well, so the AARP, of course, was a big supporter of the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare. And one of the things in Obamacare that I think a lot of us forgot is that it's mandated that you can only charge seniors up to 3 times as much as you charge young people for health care insurance. Now, the problem with that, of course, is that it has made health care more expensive for young people and is one of the contributors to the fact that you haven't seen this rush of young and healthy people to get health insurance, which was supposed to happen under Obamacare, to pay for all these generous benefits. This has caused a lot of the problems with the current system. It's why you see high deductibles, rising premiums. In certain areas, not a lot of choice. In some areas, even though other people, are still quite happy. So what the new bill would do is say you can charge seniors up to 5 times as much as you charge a young person. That's supposed to make, the goal there is to make it more affordable for young people, to incentivize them, make it more desirable and easier for them to purchase health insurance so that they'll get into the system. And, of course, young and healthy people are going to use insurance, so they're paying in a bunch of money over the years, and that money is going to pay for all of the older and sicker people. And, of course, understandably, the AARP doesn't like that, but the American Health Care Act is trying to give insurance companies more power to come up with plans that are affordable for people and pay for them, and that's what's going on there.
Well, and then the other piece of that, though, too, the pandering to seniors as well as the static analyses offered by politicians. If you have a more competitive marketplace with competing plans, then you're going to drive down the cost of those plans, as opposed to, as the point Dr. Tom Price made earlier this week and last week, a third of counties in this country have only one health insurance provider. Well, I mean, if you have effective monopolies or oligopolies, then of course prices are going to be higher, artificially higher than they would be in a more competitive marketplace. So that's one piece of it. And the other piece of it, though, too, is some honest conversation with baby boomers and seniors in this country to say, look, you're getting 1.5 to 2 times in terms of health care services what you paid into the Medicare system. So how about we reorder the generational compact here rather than feasting on the young?
Yeah, nobody wants to do that, though.
Well, I know that. I know.
I mean, even when Paul Ryan over the years has proposed to reform Medicare and Social Security for future retirees and do nothing for people that are either in retirement or near retirement, everybody goes apoplectic. The president himself campaigned on doing nothing about Medicare and Social Security, so that politically it's a stupid thing to do. And so just nobody wants to do it. People that are older, the older people get, the more they tend to vote. Lately, these older voters have been voting Republican, and so it's
affected.
Well,
this is where we are.
They're the ones affected by this age tax.
Well, Yeah. Okay. And the healthy are the one, the young are the one affected by this Ponzi scheme that we've set up. It runs in every which direction. And look, this is why Rick Santelli said on Meet the Press on Sunday. Look, it's always a political will problem. It's not. We know what a free market system looks like. We know what the implications would be. We know it would be more efficient and frankly more moral. But there's not the political will to do it because you have to have. You make an argument, a difficult one, at least in the short term, to vaunted constituencies that nobody has the appetite to make. So that's how you turn health insurance from an opportunity into an existential right. And this is how you build up $80 trillion in unfunded liabilities because everybody's a coward. I mean,
well, there's not much I can add to that.
I mean, I'm just saying, it gets a little frustrating. Republicans have the opportunity, and David, as you're mentioning, disproportionately Republican constituencies. That's where you go to your allies and you say, hey, look, we've got to have this difficult conversation and lay it out and say we need to change the trajectory of this whole darn thing called the federal government, and I need your help to do it. But instead, it's just,
right.
Pandering.
Yeah, no, look, a lot of what you're saying makes sense. Doing something that big takes leadership from the top. That's why you have a White House.
Yeah.
If the White House ever gets on board with entitlement reform, maybe it's something that can happen. Right now, the president's focused on waste, fraud, and abuse, and which obviously every president comes in talking about doing something about. He may do something about it. The money isn't there, even if they can fix that, which should be fixed. Obviously, Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security, they eat up 2/3 of government spending and growing every year by law automatically.
Right.
So, right now they got to see if they can get this health care bill done, because if they can't, it's going to impact everything that else they want to do, including tax reform.
He is David Drucker, senior Capitol Hill correspondent for the Washington Examiner, WashingtonExaminer.com. David, thanks as always for joining us.
Anytime. Thank you.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.